We live in a golden age of information. Each of you hold in your laps a treasure, a complete mahzor, including all of the text of the reading from the Torah and the Haftarah for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You may not realize this, but if you lived a mere 150 years ago, you would have had to have been somebody to have had a book like this in your hands. But thanks to easy information and easy printing, we can now make sure that everyone has a copy. We have even tried to make sure that those who can't be here in person can have a digital copy, which doesn't fit quite as comfortably in the hands, but still, hopefully, is very helpful. It's not always been that easy. The history of printing for our religious texts has been very, very long and difficult. We were one of the first to jump on the printing press revolution, and many of the texts that we now consider iconic to Judaism were forged during those early days of the printing revolution. For example, the Siddur itself found a mass market when the printing press took hold. If you've ever seen a page of the Talmud with its unique daf layout with the text in the middle and commentary around it in sort of unusual font and paragraphs, that was a printer convention as well, which did not exist prior to the establishment of printing presses. But there have been a few mistakes. I'd like to point out that most of the mistakes have not been ours. But as the printing press got going, you had a problem. If a scribe is making a copy of a text and the scribe makes a mistake, well, that's one copy that has a mistake in it. But if you are printing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, or now millions of copies, and there is a mistake in it, well, you now have millions of copies with mistakes. If you have ever delved into the wonderful minutiae and trivia of Bible printing, you may know that one of the most sought after and collected items ever is not the Gutenberg Bible. Don't get me wrong, those are fancy, expensive, and incredible if you ever get a chance to see one in person as the first printing press Bible. But the real collector's item is the Wicked Bible. The Wicked Bible has a very, very interesting mistake. In the commandments section of Leviticus, in chapter 20 of the Ten Commandments, in the commandment for not committing adultery, it omitted the word not. So it reads in good old English, "Thou shalt commit adultery." You can see why this is sought after as a collector's item. Permission from God, right? It's right here in the text, black and white. Look, it says I'm supposed to. It's not even a choice, I have to. The little slips of words, they can make a difference. Because it turns out that people actually pay attention to what's on the page. It was one of the magical things about putting more books in the hands of more people. That we realize that there is a veneration for the text, like I talked about last week. But that meant the text could also be dangerous to certain people. In the 1800s, following the Haitian Revolution, the plantation owners of the Caribbean scratched their head. They had a conundrum. They wanted to Christianize the slaves that they had brought over, the people that they had ripped from their families, enslaved and bred and treated like property. They wanted to Christianize them. But when they handed them a copy of the Bible and taught them how to read it, guess what those people discovered? The story of Moses and our liberation from Egypt. If you are somebody who owns others as property, that's not a good thing to let your property read. And we chuckle, because it's humorous, but the plantation owners cut it out. They edited the Bibles they gave to the slaves so that it would not contain the story of the Exodus, so that they wouldn't get any more ideas like those who had rebelled successfully in Haiti. Because God forbid that should happen. They edited the Torah to make it fit their beliefs, their needs, their wishes. They were not the first and they're not the last. In the 1930s, there was a political party in Germany, you've probably heard of them, the Nazi Party. And as they came to power, with a primary plank being anti-Semitism, they got a request from the school teachers. The school teachers were saying, "Dear Führer, the children are asking awkward questions. We are, of course, in compliance with all of the Nuremberg laws and other legislation that you have passed down, teaching the superiority of the Aryan people and the inferiority of the Jews. But when we teach them Bible, which was part of the state curriculum, and we get to the section where God is giving the Ten Commandments to the world, the children want to know, why is God giving the Ten Commandments to Moses the Jew? Because I thought those were inferior, horrible, subhuman people." But the children point to the text and say, "But God gave it to the Jews." The children are confused. Now, obviously a logical, rational person would have said, "You know what, the kids are right. Maybe our anti-Semitism is a little bit ungrounded in reality, logic, or sense. Maybe we should rethink this." The Nazis were not big on rethinking their ideas. And so instead they commissioned a replacement Bible. It's not well known because after the war they were almost universally destroyed in Germany. As a sign of their shame, they burnt their own Bible that had been written. But they reworked it so that the Torah was not given to the Jews, and that the Ten Commandments did not go to the subhumans. And in fact, the Ten Commandments got a couple extra commandments. For example, obeying the Führer was written into the Bible. And they got rid of any mention of Jerusalem and any mention of Jews having a special place. It was a lot of editing to get the Bible to look like that. But you know, if you have built your life around this delusion, you're ready for that much editing. Because to do otherwise might mean admitting that you were wrong. You've got to edit the Bible if you are going to be an anti-Semite. The cognitive dissonance is simply untenable for you to hate Jews, but say you love God and love God's word. It just doesn't work. Let me give you a quick test, though, to see if you are truly keeping up on this issue of editing. Because you see, there's a very famous passage in Isaiah 11. I make you bet if I say the first half, you can give me the second half. Isaiah in Isaiah 11 is talking about an image of the Messianic age. It's probably one of the most famous passages in all of Isaiah. And in it, he is talking about how this era of peace will bring together people of all types in peace. And he says, the lion shall... You're all wrong. It does not say the lion shall lie down with the lamb. We all remember it saying the lion shall lie down with the lamb. And I remember being in rabbinic school and actually reading the text for the first time, not just hearing it through pop culture or Hebrew school renditions, and being shocked. It doesn't. There is a lion, there is a lamb, there's also a leopard, there's also a wolf. It's a whole menagerie of animals that are being brought together in peace and harmony. But the verse, the lion shall lie with the lamb, is an English construction because we are suckers for alliteration. And it sounds so much better in English to say the lion shall lie with the lamb, because you get all those lovely L sounds rolling together, that is the version that everybody knows. Now, in rabbinic school, when I read the correct version, I went, boy, we're suckers. How easy it is for us to be fooled into thinking we know something when we don't. And I don't mean to embarrass all of you. That's why we all did it together, so that no individual has to take the blame. But it turns out there's another group of people who, when they encountered that same phenomenon, that is to say, when they knew to the bottom of their heart, to the depth of their soul, that the lion will lie with the lamb, and yet when they see in modern published versions of the Bible that it does not say that, they recognize something much more sinister. A conspiracy. There is a conspiracy. It's based off what is known as the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is named for Nelson Mandela, who some of you may remember died in prison. But wait, no, he didn't. And in fact, this is why it was named for this. It was when the entire community remembered something wrong. Because most people thought that Nelson Mandela had died in prison, because indeed, so many of those who had fought apartheid in South Africa did, that when he was released, people were flabbergasted, stunned that he was still alive. How could he be alive? He was dead, right? Most of us simply updated our information and said, well, I guess I remembered that wrong, and went on with our lives. But a few people said, this is a sign of something more nefarious, because what I remember must be true. And they began looking for examples of this, of where what they remember does not match what others have said is now true. There's only one solution: conspiracy. Others have conspired with, pick your enemy, Jews, devil, communists, capitalists, have conspired to change things that I know to be true in order to dilute the power of God, in order to overthrow the government, whatever it might be. And so they took matters in their own hand, and they are basically rewriting, for example, the Bible to fit what they remember it saying. So in their version, the lion lies with the lamb, because that was clearly what God had intended. Now, when people present them with evidence, not from modern printings, not from the modern publishing houses, which of course are all corrupted in the hand of big government or whatever, but present them manuscripts taken from the vaults of museums around the world, or present to them copies of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which dug up from thousands of years ago. No one can deny that these are thousands of years old. And say, no, really, it never was the lion and the lamb lying down. They have a very, very simple answer: time travel. Time travel. Hey, it worked for the Avengers, right? Why can't it work for them? It's very, very simple. Secret government plans and experiments and quantum time travel means that the government has actually gone back in time and retroactively changed the past in order to confuse you even more. And you see how well it worked. You fell for it. Because all of you were convinced the lion lies with the lamb until I told you otherwise, and I'm making you bet a few of you are still going to go home and check your Isaiah 11. So, if you're all willing to give up on that like that, then you don't know how this world operates. And they do. They are the heroes. They are the rebels against false reality. And they will tell you what is true. And only they can tell you what is true. Because the rest of us have been deceived. We have been so befuddled and confused by the machinations of the enemy, again, capital E, fill in the blank with whoever it is you hate or fear. We have been so confused and befuddled that we are no longer reliable witnesses to reality, time, text, anything. But don't worry, they'll tell you what is right and what is wrong, as they remember it to be. Makes things easier, doesn't it? Think of the allure of this. I know that it's easy to laugh at the idea that somebody literally believing, and they do literally believe, that time travel has been used to try and fabricate false versions of the Bible in order to confuse us and take us away from God. They literally believe that, and it's really easy to laugh at that, and I did, to my shame, the first time I heard about this, thinking that it was a joke, an internet troll, but it was not. But it is so tempting. Wouldn't it be nice to never doubt yourself? Wouldn't it be nice to think your version of reality just is and everyone else is mistaken? And anyone who disagrees has just been deceived or ignorant or evil? Yeah, it's a little scary to imagine there are that many evil people out there, but still, within the fortress of myself, I am now king, emperor, I am now perfect. That has to be reassuring in a world that can be awfully scary, awfully confusing, and awfully contradictory to some people's beliefs. And, of course, it makes you the hero, the avenger of God, going out to right the wrongs. And it also makes you invulnerable. Because no matter what you hear, no matter what evidence is presented to you to the contrary, any evidence is merely more evidence of the conspiracy that you are fighting against. And the part that breaks my heart for the people that are seeking this as a source of peace and understanding of meaning and purpose, to allow themselves to feel that they are champions and heroes while still retaining their understanding of the world in whichever version they seem to cling to, is that there is a better way that doesn't involve papering over the reality of life with delusions and paranoia and anxiety like this. When God gave us Torah, he said, Shema Yisrael, listen, Israel. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, the Yud He Vav He, that which we represent and understand as being the essence, the source of all of existence. This is God. And Adonai Echad. And there's only one. That's it. It's a very simple truth. I checked. It is actually written in the Torah still like that. No one changed it when I wasn't looking. But from it comes inevitable truths that can be deduced, that can be inferred, and which are reliable, dependable. If there is only one God, then what can I say about all the people around me? Were they made by the same God or by a different God? Thank you, that was not a trick question. I know I put you on edge with the whole lion and lamb thing, but no, that's not the trick question. But they were made by the same God. Very simple. Of course, that does mean that if you are living in the Caribbean as a slave owner, you're going to have to rethink your economy and how you are treating the people that you treat like property. But you can be sure that when you are looking at them, you are looking at someone else that was created b'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Because there is only one God. And if God created people, and this is a person, obviously, then guess what? We were made by the same God. It's simple. It's complicated if you are a plantation owner, because it's going to make your life a little bit harder. You're going to actually have to, give them freedom and actually talk to them, and maybe you can pay them so that they can continue to work for you. Of course, you're going to have to treat them a whole lot better than you have been. You're going to have to actually work on your side if you want to have them continue to be employees, because otherwise they'll leave, because they're free. But the vision of the world is much simpler than imagining that there is a Bible with parts missing that you give to one group, and a Bible with all the parts you give to another group, without recognizing the hypocrisy that if the Bible that has the parts that you cut out, that you gave to them, has the parts when you read it for yourself, if it would be revolutionary for them, why is it not revolutionary for you? If you know they'll get the, quote, wrong idea reading it, why aren't you getting the wrong idea reading it? The wrong idea, of course, being the right idea that they should be free. Is it really easier to hold that dissonance in your mind, that contradictory perception of reality, than it is to just let people be free and treat them well as others that have been made in the image of God? It is not. It is not. It takes so much more effort to deny the simplest of God's truth than it does to try and support the most complicated perversion of that truth. But on the other hand, it is simpler in one way, because you can do it on your own. You don't have to deal with the messiness of other people. And I know over this last year, well, going on 2 years now, some people have perhaps felt more comfortable being alone, not having to deal with other people face to face. Emails and texts replacing actual conversations. Zoom meetings where you can mute other people or mute yourself and turn the camera off and not have to actually pay attention. Kind of nice. I certainly know many students, found it an easier way to get through class than actually sitting there listening to the teacher drone on and on. But it's not actually easier in the long run. Yes, it's got the allure and simplicity of all the things that we as humans continually fall for, the suckers that we are, acting as though somehow this is simpler because it lets us feed that impulse of the moment. But long term you starve without other people. Long term, you wither without the challenge of other people. And long term, our spirits shrivel when it is not fed by that connection that only grows with others. We are symbiotic creatures. We cannot live in our own little imagined worlds, carefully curating all the information and ideas so that it only conforms to what we already think we believe. To do so is to climb into the cockpit of a plane, paint the windows black, lock the door, cover all the dials and all the instruments, and say, now I don't have to worry about all those distractions. You will crash. That is no way to fly. Judaism has given us simple, clear truths that lead to a complicated, difficult life. I told you that last night. It's tiring. It's exhausting. Absolutely. Yes, it's complicated. And yes, it's hard. We don't always see what is right. We don't always see what is good. And even harder it is to sometimes do what is right and do what is good, or else there would be no need for Yom Kippur. But to know in general, to know in the broadest sense what is right and what is wrong, that we can do. And the rest we can do together, by relying upon each other, to point out when, it's not actually the lion and the lamb. There really is a not commit adultery there. God really did say that the Torah went to the Jews and Moses. And God really does believe everyone is equal and should be free. Yeah, sometimes at different points in our life, some of those ideas may cause us to rethink and have to struggle and change. But thank God there are people to tell us when we're wrong. And thank God we don't ignore them, that we keep our eyes and ears open. And when necessary, we say to others, I'm not sure about that. The most powerful phrase you can share with another. If you're not sure that someone else is speaking the truth, let them know. Find it together. If they refuse to look with you, if they refuse to accept the simple, basic premises of reality, the simple truths of Judaism, it's going to be a long flight. Be well, everyone. Gemar Chatima Tova. Let us seal ourselves together for a good new year. Think about that.